Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance. In this show, my co-host and I delve into the novels and stories of the incredibly famous and lengthy fantasy series Dragonlance. We're going to go book by book and delve into the secrets that made this series so groundbreaking and legendary. Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, episode 9. This time around, we're going to be covering chapters 16 and 17 of Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I'm your host, Shivam, and with me is my co-host, John. Hi, John. How's it going?
Doing great, Shivam.
Yeah, man, this has been a blast to go walking through in depth through the details of Dragonlancean history, especially since now, as of recording, for the first time in over a decade, we have a brand new Dragonlance novel, Dragons of Deceit, which just came out at Gen Con in August of 2022. And I have the distinct pleasure of having gotten to work on that book and its two sequels as Margaret and Tracy's canon expert. Margaret called me her Astinus, and it's maybe the coolest thing that's ever happened to me.
Big congratulations to you on that.
Yeah.
I know it's a dream come true to be recognized officially.
Look, you know, it's one thing to call yourself the number one fan of Dragonlance. It's another thing to be the number one fan of Dragonlance.
To have it printed in a book.
You know what? When I opened that book up, like when they sent me the preprint copy and I flipped it open and I saw my name in the back with a beautiful paragraph about it, I damn near bawled. I was like, oh my God, here's 40 years of fandom finally justified. It's been amazing. It's been wild to work on because Margaret and Tracy gave me some very strict definitional restrictions on what I can and can't work with out of canon. Specifically, they're like, look, you have to use the Dragonlance Atlas. And I'm like, well, I love the Dragonlance Atlas. That's fine. And we need to keep it cohesive to Chronicles and Legends. I'm like, also fine, easy. Also, I need to know the names of 38 dragons that existed in this specific time period. And I'm like, I'll get back to you on that one. Or like, did we ever say why mages can't see Nuitari? And I'm like, okay, Margaret. Okay, hang on. It's been amazing, man. Just every day I wake up to my email, I look inside the inbox, and there's a random question from her of like utter, it's like going back to old forums and old message boards and old news group like arguments again.
It's surprising to me that there's not a lore Bible. A lot of these...
There is. It's just me.
Yeah, but, like a lot of you, when they set these things up, there's like a textbook, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like other settings and IPs and stuff have like Bibles that are full definitional understandings of it. The thing is, Dragonlance predates the need for a lot of those.
Yeah.
It never, and if there was, I'm sure WotC had one for like 5th Age or whatever. Those don't exist anymore or aren't in a place that are easily accessible. Margaret and Tracy certainly don't have them.
They got lost by someone.
Yeah, exactly. Like Margaret and Tracy don't even have like the original maps of stuff that they published. And it's wild sometimes to think about. Like, it's funny when Margaret comes to me and is like, man, why is this thing named this thing? And I'm like, well, when you named it in 1984, this is what your explanation was. And she's like, man, what was I thinking? And I'm like, I've been wondering that for a long time. It's been amazing. It's been delightful. And I'm really just heartened by the reaction from fans. It's been a real labor of love. And I cannot wait for more people to read it and check out the sequels when they come out.
I plan on reading it, but, I have a couple dozens of books to get to before I hit it up.
I do not recommend picking this book up sight unseen. If you have not read at least the core books of Chronicles, Legends, and Summerflame, you're going to have a challenge with this. And by that, I mean, it's going to suck and you're not going to understand it. And it's going to be weird. If you are a true blood who's been reading this forever, we have shoved stuff in here. Every possible reference I can get away with or get past Margaret and Tracy have definitely been like, that's really cool and cute. We are not doing that. And I'm like, but the fans need to know that the floor of the Inn of the Last Home is made out of stone. And she's like, Tal. And I'm like, no, let me have this one.
But it says it in the first book, so they should already know.
Right, dude, seriously. But it's been great. Anyways, here we are. In chapter 16, the last chapter just ended on this amazing, crazy cliffhanger where our dear friend Riverwind just got bathed in acid.
Yeah, pretty traumatic.
Yeah, it's like one of the goriest scenes in the books, even, frankly. It is gross. And so here we are, chapter 16, A Bitter Choice, The Greatest Gift, with, in our show notes, John has so kindly put the most manga-looking art we've had in the whole series, with this beautiful statue of Mishakal and her missing staff, but looking straight out of, like,
1980s manga.
Yeah, like exact Nadia of the Blue Waters or something like that.
Yeah.
Project A-ko level of bubble eyes. It's really weirdly out of place.
Yeah, it does make me wish I knew. Like, you could tell that they're done by different artists just by the art style on them.
Yeah.
Wish I could identify who drew this one just to see if maybe
they were a weeb before their time.
Maybe they were a manga artist. I don't know. Like, and they were just doing contract art. Or
they definitely were not. This was all done like in-house.
Someone has had anime as an influence, I think, or manga.
Yeah, somebody though was definitely looking at like Robotech or whatever at the time. But the thing is wild too, when you look at the statue, you know, her dress is flowing and her hair is flowing and everything. I'm like, nobody is carving a statue to look like that.
No.
Come on, man. If you've ever been to a temple where, you know, people actually have deities and idols there, they're not spending their time making the things flow. But
so the last chapter, chapter 15, ended with Tanis telling Sturm to kill Riverwind to end it. And then Rasitlin said to stop. Then Goldmoon tells them to come in. And there was a bit of a fight. Ended with Rasitlin telling Tanis that it's not their job to determine whether Riverwind lives or not, but it's the gods to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it picks up. And this chapter starts with right where it left off. And Tanis is just staring at Rasitlin. He's trying to look into his eyes, see his soul. Can't see anything. And it's just like he finds that he really, really hates Rasitlin. Like, he hates him for not being emotional, hates him for not being hurt. He really feels that this should have affected him more.
It turns out when you're staring at a dude's eyes and those eyes are just golden hourglasses staring back at you, it's hard to get a lot of depth into Rasitlin. And Rasitlin, of course, is just being a smug, absolute, fine, whatever. If she wants him.
You already mentioned Rasitlin doesn't see things the way we see them.
Yeah.
So as horrific as this is for Tanis and everyone else to watch a man's melted in front of them and to see it, that's what Rasitlin sees every day, all the time. Yeah,
can you imagine going through life with this curse that they've got where Rasitlin looks at a flower and the flower starts to rot. He looks up. I mean, how hard must it be to eat if you're Rasitlin and you're going through your kitchen and you're like, oh, well, that bread's moldy. And they're like, no, it's perfectly fine. I just baked it. Oh, God damn it. He looks and he goes down to pet a dog and the dog just has a heart attack and dies. And how miserable of a life. Of course, he's not going to show emotion to the fact, like, to Tanis, Riverwind just got flayed and then dipped in acid and is just like melting away. To Rasitlin, it is Tuesday, right? Like,
yeah, it's just another day.
It's just, well, P's bleeding. Yeah, what else is new, bud? I'm just imagining him going to like a market and talking to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper's just eyeballs fall out or whatever. And it's like, can I just please get my basil and go home? You know?
And now it makes a little more sense why he only drinks tea.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of decay going on there.
Turns out when your herbs are already dried, they're already dead. I'm assuming his meals end up being a lot of jerky. Like, strip of leather. It's not going to change. Sturm sits there and he's like, okay, we got to do something. He's not dead. The dragon's coming back. And Tan's like, fine, wrap him in a blanket, whatever. Let's go. Let me go talk to Goldmoon. Because Tanis, of course, being the gentleman that he is, goes in, is like, look, I need you to know. And he's playing like good cop here. Somebody in your family has been in a horrific accident, and the cops come and say, like, look, I need you to understand what you're about to see is horrific, right? And so Tanis, of course, doing the good leader job, going up, trying to bring him up there. The text itself says the man's body was nothing more than a dark, shapeless mass in the moonlight. Basically, after the dragon attack, Riverwind is literally just a pile of meat and bones. He's like just been boiled. It's like disgusting. Of course, Goldmoon is sitting there like, bring him to me. I got this. And Tanis like, dude, he's horribly injured. He's dying. There's nothing you can do, not even Seth. And Goldmoon, of course, says, shut up, chill, and please listen to me. And so the half-elf fell silent, seeing her clearly for the first time. In astonishment, he realized the plainswoman was tranquil, calm, and uplifted. Her face in the moonlight was the face of the sailor who has fought stormy seas in his fragile boat and drifted at last into peaceful waters. So obviously something has happened to Goldmoon to give her this endless sense of peace and fulfillment. She has had an awakening. Because the next paragraph is that Goldmoon hadn't heard the approach of the dragon, nor had seen its attack on Riverwind, because when she walks into Xak Tsorath, she separates from the party because she feels this compulsion to go up into this temple. She walks across the rubble in the stairs and looks at these golden doors that are shimmering kind of this reddish silver, right? She hears a voice coming from inside this temple. Now, obviously, she can feel the dragon and the commotions and the wave of magic emanating from this thing that's causing this aura of fear. But this voice comes and said, "Come inside, child." And so Goldmoon lifts her head and she's like, "Wait a second, that voice is her mom's voice." But her mom died a bagillion years ago when she was super young. Something has happened to Goldmoon here. She walks inside and she feels her mother's voice. And she's like, "Yo, her mom's like, I'm sorry, it's been a while. And life is going to suck for you. And it's going to get worse. But if you're here, you're going to find what you seek." And Goldmoon's like, "Yeah, but my friends are dying. And I've got the staff that heals people. And can I do something about that?"
I think this is funny. She's basically like, "I'm 30 years old and my life is over." Is what she does here. And she's like, "I don't have any children. My tribe's been stolen from me. Like, nothing can get better," is what she's basically saying. It's interesting.
Yeah, like that's a very telling passage right there. She's like, "This isn't fair," Goldmoon screamed silently. She's like, "We never wanted this. We only wanted to love each other, and now we may lose that. We've sacrificed so much, and none of it's made a difference. I am 30 years old, mother, 30 and childless. They've taken my youth, they've taken my people, and I have nothing to show in return. Nothing except this." And she shook the staff. "And now I'm being asked to give it up again?" That's a hell of a paragraph. You're getting a real deep inside look at Goldmoon here. It's like, she is 30 in a culture where she would have been married by 20. But her love of her life is this dude who's a low-caste warrior who was sent on this foolish quest that took him forever to come back from. And he finally comes back only to have it all stolen away and to have what she thinks the best years of her life have just come and gone. Obviously, we know later on that Goldmoon has children, and her children become very important characters in the 5th age of Dragonlance. And very, very cool characters. I like them a lot.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, man. The Spirit of the Wind is a great novel by Chris Pearson, and Goldmoon's daughters and Goldmoon's sons are very cool. But here, Goldmoon is 30 years old. She is not thinking about that. She's thinking about the fact that she used to be 20, and now she's got this damn stick, and now her whole village is gone. Her mom shows up and says, "Yeah, life's going to suck for you, and then it's going to get worse. Bye." So
she doesn't say bye. She says that, where is it?
Oh yeah, "Come here inside the temple. You will find what you seek." That's what she says.
She walks inside the temple. She goes in right as the dragon comes from the well. So as her husband, fiance is being killed, she's doing this. It's dark in the temple, and then there's a pale light, and then there's a room with a statue in the center. It's the statue we were just talking about, of singular grace and beauty. There's a glow coming from the statue. It's a beautiful woman full of radiant hope tempered by sadness. There's an amulet that hangs from the statue's neck. The voice of her mom identifies the statue as Mishakal. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
The goddess of healing. Goldmoon's mom's voice says that she serves this god. So I thought that was really interesting because I was like, oh, there's an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
Where clearly Goldmoon's mom did not serve Mishakal before she died. Right? No one serves the gods.
Well, there's a little bit of weirdness here because of the fact that the Quishu and the native people of Abyssinia in this modern time have this sort of ancestor worship. But they used to be worshippers of the true God. But it's got almost a bit of Islamicness to it, of oh yeah, Muhammad was the true prophet and a monotheist, and his family were never pagans in Mecca, and they were always monotheists. And you got this whole sensation of yeah, Goldmoon's family was a bunch of heretics who we know that Riverwind's family was heretics who worshipped the old gods, but here is Goldmoon's mom saying, "Yo, I always prayed to the ancestors, but it turns out the ancestors were actually just working on the behalf of the true goddess Mishakal, goddess of healing."
Oh, I didn't take it that way at all. I took it as a Mormon thing.
Oh, well, yeah, it's probably more that than this.
Because in Mormon doctrine, there's a whole other life that you have after you die.
Uh-huh.
You can still accept Jesus as God and Joseph Smith as a prophet, and the LDS Church is true after you die. You don't get, everything's not as good for you as if you had accepted it here. But that's why they do baptisms for the dead. That's why they do sealings for the dead, because you can make choices after you die. And so that's how I thought of it.
Huh.
Goldmoon's mom died, and then she came to the pearly gates.
And then she discovered that there's a truth here and converted.
And, in LDS doctrine, there are people who are going to go there and they'll still won't accept it. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how you could die. And then you're faced with an absolute reality that Joseph Smith was right. And then you're still going to be like, nah, I don't like Joseph Smith. And it's like, standing there next to God. What are you talking about?
It's hard to deny the thing in front of you. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because in the theology as well, in LDS theology, you've got the Native Americans being given the truth in the golden plates to bring back, which we will come to learn that. Well, here, let me just read this section here, because this is basically finally 16 or whatever chapters in. We are given the quest and the thesis of what is the point. This segment here, where Goldmoon meets her mother and then meets the goddess, is literally the starting point of the driving narrative of the story. This is what the whole thing is about. This is where you realize that the main character is not Tanis, it's not Rasitlin, but is actually just the pivotal character of the story is Goldmoon, and everybody else is just kind of in her making sure that her pathway is clear to do the things she needs to do.
It's basically, this is a meta quest for the first trilogy.
Yes. Really just the first novel.
Oh, okay.
After that, it becomes more of like, okay, well, once you get to the book, we'll get to it. But here we go. Goldmoon sits there and she hears her mother's voice, and she's going there and standing and looking at this anime statue that's got this strange amulet hanging around its neck. And Goldmoon realizes this statue looks weird. It's this woman standing there with her hands out, but her hands are obviously curved and hollow as if they've been holding a long, slender pole. Huh, how weird is that? Goldmoon's like, it seems that my staff would fit right there. And she puts it in there. And the wooden staff immediately starts shining with that soft blue light. It looks like a fluorescent light bulb in the 80s, kind of just starting to glow. And just like a fluorescent light bulb, it takes a minute, clicks in, and it gets really, really bright. Goldmoon falls to her knees and then suddenly feels the force of divinity in front of her. And she hears this voice. Suddenly she's like, oh man, I've been a complete selfish jerk. And the voice says, yo, don't be ashamed of your questioning, beloved disciple. Your questioning that led you to us, and your anger that'll sustain you through the trials ahead. You've come seeking the truth, and you're going to get it, or you shall receive it, is what they say. The gods didn't turn away from man. It was man that turned away from the true gods. That's Mormon right there.
Yeah.
That's hard Mormon. Pearl of great price all up in this. Kryn's about to face its greatest trial. Men will need the truth more than ever. You, my disciple, must return the truth and power of the true gods to men. It's time to restore the balance of the universe. So there...
Goldmoon just had Joseph Smith's first vision, right? If you type that into Google, Joseph Smith's first vision, you can read about it, and that's basically what Goldmoon is having.
Yeah.
Where God tells Joseph Smith that Christianity didn't fail men, men failed Christianity, and they left, but now they're bringing it back to Joseph Smith. So here, the good gods of Kryn are telling Goldmoon that she's got to bring back the truth.
Yeah. So this is a heady kind of paragraph here. First off, we were given this notion of the balance of the universe, which is one of the key driving forces of Dragonlance, where you've got the three pantheons, the good, neutral, and evil, and this pendulum that swings between them, and that gives kind of order and balance to the universe. And evil has tipped the scales. So evil is rising and overcoming. The gods of good are gone, and it is up to Goldmoon, who is like, right now, she's just like, yo, my boyfriend is a pile of meat outside, and I haven't seen him in years, and my entire people have been destroyed. And now you want me to bring the word back to the people? Me? Who am I, right? And so Mishakal continues, for as the gods of good have returned to men, so have the gods of evil, constantly striving for men's soul. The queen of darkness has returned, seeking that which will allow her to walk freely in this land once more. Dragons, once banished to the nether regions, will walk the land. Now we have the plot. Now we have Goldmoon has been given a task to bring the gods back, and because the Queen of Darkness, who has been banished away, has found a way to come back to Kryn, wake up her dragons who went away with her, and take over the world. So boom, there's your plot.
A question. Is it ever explained when the cataclysm happened, did the Queen of Darkness and Paladin agree to leave? Or is it never explained?
So they don't explain it in this book, but here's the essence of what happens. In the Third Dragon War, so about 2,000 years before Cataclysm, there were like multiple dragon wars through history between the gods of good and the gods of evil. The Third Dragon War is the War of Huma, who is the knight we've been following the story of. Huma and the Silver Dragon, they fall in love, because Takesis has come and she wants to take over the world and do evil things or whatever. And that's where Huma gets a Dragonlance. And they create the dragon orbs in the towers. They find a way to unite the forces, bring the good dragons back and defeat her. And she is fully bodily on Krynn. Huma stabs her with the Dragonlance, pins her to the ground, and she's in excruciating pain. And he forces her, because he's about to die, because she's obviously one of the prime goddesses, the queen of evil, and she's going to vaporize him. And Huma says, I'm not going to pull this lance out of you until you promise by your own creator, by the high god, to leave forever and take your dragons with you. And Takesis is in such excruciating pain that she swears this oath upon the high god and creation itself to leave and never come back. Now, she writes some clauses into there, and when the cataclysm happens, because, the king priest becomes overwhelmingly good and unbalances things, and the gods of good have to then reset everything. By doing so, Takesis basically says, hey, the world that I said I wouldn't come back to doesn't exist anymore. It's a totally different world now.
Mm-hmm.
She takes the king priest's old temple and starts to corrupt it and finds a loophole to be able to come back. And that's what Mishakal is talking about here.
Got it.
The Queen of Darkness is coming back. We've seen Draconians, which will be explained to us soon enough. We've seen that dragons are now walking the Krynn again. That means that the queen has found her path back. And Mishakal, who is a goddess of good, has also sworn an oath of non-involvement, like neutrality or whatever, and can't directly impact the world because the gods left. Here's the thing that you don't understand. So at the Cataclysm, part of the shtick is we have to leave. I don't understand necessarily why the gods of good have to leave, but they do. They withdraw from I guess in shame from having destroyed the world or something. But Mishakal, who's the goddess of healing, is like, yo, this is effed up. And there's infinite innocents who are dying because we've just decided to nuke the world and leave. And so instead of doing that, in Talatis, the other continent, she forms a mystery cult called the Cult of Mislaxa, which starts 4 or 5 years after the Cataclysm, where she basically creates this whole hidden cult around her to go and heal and help people who had nothing to do with the king priests who were just getting punished. And I love that idea that she's just a renegade rogue driven by justice and the need to heal people. And even to hear in the beginning, who's the first god we get back? Yeah, Fizban's there in the beginning, but the real mover and shaker is Mishakal, her staff, going to this dude in the middle of nowhere to bring Goldmoon here. She sent the staff with Riverwind to go get Goldmoon to bring her back here in order to take up the quest to bring everything back.
Mishakal is presenting herself as a god. Fizban is doing things on the sly. He's doing it secretly.
Exactly. He's just pretending to be a befuddled old dude. Mishakal's like, no, I am legitimately one of the deities. I'm here. And she says, look, to gain the power to defeat them, you will need the truth of the gods. This is the greatest gift of which you were told. Because that's why they came here. They're like, I've heard the greatest gift is here. Below this temple, in the ruins of haunted by the glories of ages past, rest the discs of Mishakal, circular discs made of glowing platinum. Not gold, platinum. Find the discs and you can call upon my power, for I am Mishakal, goddess of healing. And your way will not be easy. The gods of evil will know and fear the great power of the truth. The ancient and powerful black dragon Kisanth, known to men as Onyx, guards the discs. Her lair is in the ruined city below us, etc., etc. Therefore I bless the staff. Present it boldly, never wavering, and you shall prevail.
This is a different dragon than the one we just saw, right?
That is the same dragon.
The same one, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You said it was a young dragon last episode, and this is saying this.
Yeah, it is a young dragon, but
I guess that's relative.
Yeah, it's relative. In the grand scheme of things, Kisanth is a young dragon, but as far as Mishakal is concerned, they're just trying to make a point. She's just trying to drive it home. This is a big evil dragon.
Got it.
Then the voice fades, and Goldmoon suddenly hears Riverwind's death cry, and it's like, oh, well, that's a lot. So that's a real hell of a task that has been given to her. And this is 100% Mormon theology.
Yeah.
Blatant face truth here. The whole discs in the hand of a native.
They're discs instead of plates, and we're going to find out she's going to have to translate them. And that's also from...
Mm-hmm. I mean, she won't have to translate them from ancient Egyptian, but we do what we can.
Reformed Egyptian. Thank you very much.
I'll take your word for it. Think about what's happened. The Goldmoon walks in and just has like traumatic event. A visitation of the divine is insane. That's the sort of thing that would drive people completely out of their mind, right? Like you see this in like the Bhagavad Gita or in the Bible. God can't go show true form to people without obfuscation, or they will just dissolve. Like Arjuna in the Gita is like, Krishna, show me your universal form. I promise I'll be fine. And Krishna's like, no, you really won't, but okay. And then 10 seconds later, Arjuna's like, no, please, God. Because he sees like, the entire universe going into his mouth and coming out the other side and like the entirety of creation in his nostril. And he's just like, I can't handle this. And he's like, I, in fact, did tell you. Goldmoon just sees this soft white light and the statue, because if Mishakal walked in purposefully, she would have been as meat stuck as Riverwind would.
Well, and this is the first religious experience anyone has had in over 300 years. So
yeah, basically. Like this is the first time they even acknowledge the existence of a divinity, right?
Yeah, because at this point, everyone's like, the gods abandoned us.
Yeah, basically.
So it's not even worth talking about them. So they don't even know what it is that...
It feels a whole lot like Han Solo level of like ancient hokey religion. Who even knows what that crap is? No one cares. Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, I can pick up an X-Wing with my nose. Now we flash back to the present. Tanis enters into the temple and he's just suddenly overcome from this feeling of peace. He's taken back to his youth and thinks about happy times walking in the sunlight. And he's like, what the hell what is going on?
They've probably never felt like this their entire lives, except for maybe when they were kids. They've never had that kind of peace. Yeah,
this tranquility, right? Like this sense of just like complete, everything is going to be okayness. And so Goldmoon's like, yeah, we'll get to that. Just hang on a second. She goes and drags Tanis to Mishakal. Tanis sees the statue there and he sees that the blue crystal staff is part of it. And he's just like stun locked, right? And then suddenly there's a shadow and Karaman and Sturm come bearing the body of Riverwind between them. And everybody sort of comes in. They put Riverwind down in front of the statue, in front of Goldmoon. And he's got this big blanket that's just soaked in blood. And Goldmoon's like, take the blanket off. And Tanis is like, I don't think you want to do that. And Rasitlin, while Tanis is talking, he's just like, he just swipes the blanket off. And suddenly Goldmoon's just like, oh, just scream of horror because this thing is just, well, it's her boyfriend and he's not.
He's goo.
He's messed up. She takes his staff and she lies it down on Riverwind's body and soft blue light fills the chamber. Now, mind you, by putting the staff back in the hands of Mishakal, in the rules, she has recharged the entire thing to full and then goes and expends all the charges once again to bring Riverwind back from effectively the dead. But the power there, because Mishakal is literally and figuratively present in this temple, in her home, Haram al-Sharif or whatever, this is her sanctum sanctorum, and she has chosen this moment to bodily be there. Suddenly, everybody who is in that room feels a pain and exhaustion of their day, just flee. They're all back to full health. They've been shed of dragon fear. Hangnails go away. Their hair regrows. Everything is good again.
It's right here that the quest that they spent 5 years on and kind of their whole life is complete.
Right.
They went looking for the old gods and they said, oh, I didn't find anything. It was fake. And here they are. They found them and they've just witnessed a miracle. So
yeah.
And they never say that in the book, but it's shown here it's complete. And then they're given a new quest.
Basically.
Right? Like, okay, you found us. Here we are. And now that you found us, we have tasks for you, right? One of the things is don't go looking for gods because they're going to have work for you.
Exactly. It's like, you know what? Maybe you don't need to be like so actively searching. They'll find you when they need you. You're right, though, right? The story starts. They're on a quest to find the gods. And then they have the, adventure. They have the big boss battle against a dragon. They find the gods. Yay, we all level up. Everybody's back to health. Full rest. And now, here we are. We have a brand new quest to go from here. Riverwind stands up. He hugs Goldmoon. Everybody's happy. They rest. They relax. And Goldmoon explains what's going on. And she's like, okay, now we just got to go downstairs and grab these discs. And everybody's like, that doesn't seem great. That seems really hard. Meanwhile, Tasselhoff is just like, I'm going to go explore this place because I'm bored. And he comes back and he finds this helm, which is just then becomes one of the motifs that follows them throughout the entire saga, where Flint holds up, like, he finds his big helm, and Kendra's like, I'm not going to wear a helmet. I've got long hair. I don't need this crap. And he throws it at Flint, and it's this ancient design, and he's like, oh, this is undoubtedly a dwarf. It's got a long tail of animal hair on it. He puts this thing on, and Tanis is like, yo, dude, that's horsehair. And Flint's like, no, hell no, it's not. Because Flint is like horrifically scared of horses, but pretends he's just allergic. So he takes a big whiff of the horse thing, and he's like, no, of course not. I didn't sneeze. It's a griffin. And then Carmen's like, griffin? There's about as many griffins on Kryn as there are. And then Rayson's like, dragons? And everybody's like, oof. Because Wet Blanket over there is just here to wreck town.
They get to rest for the first time in weeks.
Yeah.
And they don't have to set a watch. They're under the protection of the god.
Yeah, like Tasselhoff sits there and says, right, exactly what he says. Like, I think Goldmoon's right. Let's trust these old gods since it seems we found them. You got a little bit more theology in there.
Yeah, this was another interesting point where we learned that the dwarves and the elves still worship the old gods. But apparently I don't know what this is. Like you said, it's theology. What is the difference between going through the motions and actually believing, right? Like that's a real theological point, because some people would say, it's the motions that count, right? Like,
right. Well, it depends. Like, are you a ritualist or are you a spiritualist, right? Like, is the ritual the thing, or is it just, it's interesting because the conversation basically like, Flint is like, look, the elves and dwarves never gave up. Raorix is one of the old gods and we've worshipped him since the Cataclysm. And Tanis is like, worship or cry to him in despair because you guys were left out of Thorbarton. And he's like, and no, don't get mad. The elves aren't any worse either. Like, they just, beg and plead to the gods and don't do anything. I think there's a real distinct difference here because, like, the elves are old enough and dwarves are old enough to remember when the gods were here, right? Like, some of them even predate the Cataclysm. Some of them are that old.
Yeah.
But there is, I think, like in Japan, after...
I think this is a real Protestant ethic here. This is a real Protestant point of view where they're putting forth that it's actual true belief when I think in Judaism, there is a belief part to it. But actually, if you talk to some rabbis, they'll tell you, well, the belief's not important. God told us to do these things, and it's doing those things,
right?
Doing the rituals is what will connect you to God eventually, right?
Yes.
And it's the same. You were going to mention, I don't know what you're going to say about Japan, but it's the same in some forms of like Zen Buddhism, right? Like the only thing that matters is sitting,
right? And
don't worry about if Buddha is real or if you will achieve enlightenment. Enlightenment is sitting. That's it. And you won't. That sounds stupid. And they say, I know that sounds stupid, but all I can tell you is that once you sit long enough, then you are enlightened, right? Like but you can't do it without sitting.
Yeah. It's basically, it's like that whole very Lutheran ideal of like, only work will save you.
Yeah.
Doing the ritual, doing the motions is well and good. I mean, you see this in Brahmanical reform in India too. The Buddha himself was getting mad because the Vedic religion was becoming really just based on rituals and chants. And he's like, this is not getting you anywhere. You're not doing anything. You're not acting. You're just mouthing the words. And to an extent, there's power in that. But there's also like, are you actually praying? Like, it doesn't sound like you're praying. There's no faith here. What you guys are doing is whining. Like, that's what Tanis is saying. Is like, you guys are just like crying about this, but nothing's going on. And what I was going to say is like in Japan, after the state religion was dismantled in World War II, and they're like, the emperor has to go up and say, I'm not a god, and state Shinto and everything fell apart. They still go through and do like New Year's rituals and claps and do a lot of the kind of Shinto like ceremonial things. They don't necessarily believe, but it's like different than the way we in the West consider the idea of belief.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're just like, this is the thing we do for good luck. We may not believe in luck, but this is just part of who we are. And similarly, like, I don't think the dwarves and the elves are singing hymns to Paladine or to Raorix or whatever. They're just there and they're like, bye, Raorix. This thing is messed up. It's like they're swearing by it because it's the word they use, not because they're particularly concerned with what the old dwarven god is saying. This is the first time any of these people are actually experiencing divinity in their presence.
The chapter ends with, even though they say, like Tasselhoff says, we don't need a set watch, Sturm says that, well, I'm going to take watch. we have this nice little ending where he's lulled to sleep by his mother's voice singing a lullaby.
Yeah.
We have this little nice moment of peace. All the horror from the last chapter is undone.
Yeah.
And we move into chapter 17, The Paths of the Dead, Racelin's New Friends.
And now, after that, like 2 chapters of just like horror and theology, we are given some much needed respite and introduced to one of the best characters from one of the worst races in all of Dragonlance. The chapter picture is, of course, Bappu, the Gully Dwarf.
The most important character, arguably, in all of Dragonlance.
Oh, she is fundamental. She is what makes Rasitlin human. She is what makes Rasitlin a character you can care about who's not just a one-dimensional asshole.
Yeah.
You know, like, she is maybe you're right, actually. I would say that in the Chronicles, her role is maybe the most important and untouchable in terms of just like, if I was going to rewrite these stories, you would have to have her because she is fundamental.
Yep.
So we take up this next morning. Caramon's trying to put his clothes on, drops his breastplate. Everybody wakes up. They stretch. They're feeling really, really good, you know. And it's weird because, like, Tanis is having a moment like, I saw Riverwind die and then not die, and I'm not sure how to deal with that.
See, Racetlin is memorizing his spells.
Yeah.
And there's some discussion where we learn only the most powerful mages and spells have any effects on dragons. And Tanis mentions equivalent Soth.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, there are other Soths in these books, and are these Soths related, or?
There's a reason why later versions of the Dragonlance novels change equivalent Soth last name to be Soth, S-A-T-H, instead of S-O-T-H.
Okay.
Because Lord Soth is a human knight, and I don't know, maybe these guys just had the name Soth in their head a lot, but like equivalent Soth is just a random, the Nada figure in the story. He's just a like pseudo-celestial bard who just shows up whenever they need a name to tell you about some historic thingamajig from 1,000 years ago.
So not related to the...
Unrelated to anything, just a name that is very handy.
Can understand why they changed it then, because I'm sure there was lots of fan theories until they did.
Yeah, boy. Because it's like there's only 2 Soths in the book.
Yeah.
One a random elven bard and the other a death knight. Tanis is looking at this young man because Race is obviously like 22 or 23 or something. And he's like, yeah, you might be smart and strong, but that's a dragon and we're screwed. But, you know, Caramon sets up, Racing sets up, everybody gets up and they're like, all right, well, let's just get up and get out of here. They leave. Goldmoon prays to the statue as she goes, and they're on their way.
There's this interesting breakdown where they decide to list all the armor and weapons the companions have.
Oh, yeah. It's just like
they're reading their stat sheets, right? Their inventory and their stat sheet.
Yeah, exactly. Look, they need to remind you these guys are adventurers. It's just like, okay, so Riverwind's got his quiver of arrows and his longbow. Well, this is where they basically tell you the classes of these characters, right? So Tanis has his longbow and arrows and his dagger and longsword, so he's obviously a ranger or a fighter. Sturm has his 2-handed sword because he's a cavalier / knight / paladin. Caramon's got his shield and longsword, the traditional sword and board fighter. Flint has his lost battle axe because he is a dwarf. Dwarves carry axes. Why? Because they do. Tasselhoff has a hoopok and a small dagger, so now we know what halflings on Kryn carry. Hoopoks and daggers. But this dagger becomes one of the most iconic daggers in all of Dragonlance. Tasselhoff was very proud of it and deeply wounded when Caramon told him it would be of use if they ran into any ferocious rabbits. So it becomes known as Rabbit Slayer, and Rabbit Slayer is a famous dagger that shows up in like every Weiss and Hickman story about Dragonlance thereafter, because it's just iconically, randomly important, and is just great. Goldmoon, the cleric, has her staff, because that's basically it, right? And Riverwind has his longsword, so longsword and dagger, so we are given to know that Riverwind is either a barbarian class or a fighter, but in his stats, he's just a raw fighter. There's a lot of fighters, 1 mage, 1 cleric. There's no rogue types, well, Tika is later, but there's no and I guess Tasselhoff's a rogue. But yeah, it's a very heavy on the run straight forward and hit things. Good old first edition D&D.
I was just going to say that fits in with first edition rules, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. It sure does. So,
Rasitlin somehow knows that the path that they have to take down is called the Path of the Dead. He could lead them there if this was not a ruin, so he must have read it in a book at some point. And that the stairs...
Sure, he read it in a book. That's exactly what happened.
The stairs lead to catacombs where kings and priests were buried. And Sturm again accuses him here of being evil. Says he sold his soul. And he wants to know what he gave up for his power. Caramon, of course, sticks up for his brother, says they can't say what he gave up. They're not allowed to talk to. We are forbidden to speak of it. But you have known me many years, Sturm Brightblade, and I give you my word of honor. You may trust my brother as you trust me. If ever a time comes when that is not so, may my death and his be not far behind. And then I was surprised here because there's a comment that they look like brothers. And I was like, oh, I never even thought that they looked anything like each other.
Yeah, because you're so often given the description of Rasitlin as like, oh, he's got gold skin and he's got crazy eyes and he's got white hair and he's sick and stuff. Yeah, but he's still twin brothers with Caramon.
Yeah.
They're fraternal twins, but they're still twins and they still look like each other. Like, they definitely are brothers. Once you get past looking at the fact that he's a horror, they're still brothers. They still definitely look like that. But Sturm, of course, trusts Caramon with his life, and he's like, all right, well, I'm sorry, Rasitlin. You should be lucky that you have such a loyal brother. And Racing's like, like, get off me, bro. Because even in that right there, when Sturm's like, you should be thankful you have such a loyal and happy and healthy and protective brother, and Racing's bitterness is just so pure. He's like, I have wanted to be independent my whole goddamn life, but I've got this sickness condition that I'm stuck with, and I'm stuck with this big oaf of an idiot. All of you think I should be thankful for it. And that's like his entire driving motivation right there. That he's just like, I hate this. I hate you all. I hate that I have to have him as my crutch. And the bitterness just drives him.
You know, one day he'll show us all.
That's exactly it. This is Rasitlin at his edgiest, lordiest edgelordness.
Tanis tells him all to get over it.
Yeah, and Tanis like, all right, bro, can you take us through it? And Racing's like, yeah, sure. If we'd come here before the cataclysm, this place is like, look, when the mountain hit, this place fell off a cliff. So, good luck.
Rasitlin and Sturm take the lead. Tanis organizes the rest of the party. He's not happy about being chosen for this task. And it's like, well, you went looking for the old gods.
Here you go.
They follow these stairs down and down and down. And finally, they see a gray light. There's a door in front of them. And they hear and feel these odd sounds and vibrations. There's a metallic scraping, followed by a shrill screech. And at first, they're really scared. And they're listening. And then as they listen, they just hear this over and over again. And then they just have no idea what's going on. So they send Tasselhoff out. He's always the scout.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a large hole in the ruins. One side collapsed. There's a waterfall. There's doorways on the north and south. The sound comes from the north, heads to the south. And we find out it's a bunch of small, fat figures running from one door to the other. And here we learn about Gully Dwarves. Yeah,
Caramon's like, what in the name of the abyss was that? Those aren't Draconians unless they've come up with a short, fat breed. And this is one of the cringiest and saddest things in all of Dragonlance. This race of Gully Dwarves that's just like, even then, it was kind of embarrassing and like shameful. And there's a reason why in all of Dragonlance, the Gully Dwarves almost never show up outside of a very small span of time, just because everybody is really embarrassed by them existing. Except, weirdly enough, my favorite novel in all of Dragonlance is literally The Gully Dwarves, because it gives them agency and a real cool setting, and also has one of my favorite dragons of all time, Verdant Leafglow, and her Crisis of Faith. So, what are Gully Dwarves? In Dragonlance and in D&D, it's important to know that they're, like, I guess we got to go briefly through creation. Because, and I'll be fast, because we've talked about this before. Effectively, in the beginning, there were, ogres, elves, and humans, one made by evil, good, and neutral. The humans, Reorx is off there building his whole, forging the universe. He takes a bunch of special humans with him to become his assistants. These humans shrink down over time and become the first gnomes, or gnomoi, or smiths, depending on which version of the story you're reading. And these guys are officially the first, tinkery, engineering type gnomes. They're basically the progenitor race of gnomes, dwarves, and theoretically Kender. So the gnomes are there, and then Rarix gets pissed because some of these guys get proud and arrogant, and he curses them to take the shapes of these gnomes, but to have like no inventionable ability. They just suck at everything. Every invention they do is like 3 times too big, and chances of exploding are high, and they're unable to follow through an idea. They basically turn them into like ADHD / OCD engineers. Like, you want to make a back scratcher and it ends up being a submarine. Then the Grey Gem of Gargath is, these gnomes are out there living their lives. They've been cursed. One of the evil gods like, yo, you know what would be cool? If you went and took the Grey Gem from Lunatari and gave it to me. And the gnome's like, that doesn't sound like a good idea, but you're using divine magic to compel me, so sure, why not? So Milgus Kadwar, one of the original gnomes, builds this ladder, climbs to the moon, takes the rock down, and unleashes chaos in the world. And the gnomes are like, oh, crap. And so go and they chase after it. This ends up creating the Sea Elves and the Minotaurs and all these other races, the Grey Gem races we call them. And then they chase it down to this tower where this mage known as Gargath has used 2 stones to grab this Grey Gem and control it. So these guys build these 2 siege engines to try to knock this thing down. They go, they get it. They beat Gargath and they take the rock back. And then they start fighting. Half of them want to break this rock apart and turn it into like money and jewels and gems. And half of them are curious about what it does and crazy to know how this works. They're proof of magic, and suddenly those gnomes become dwarves and Kender, right? The Kender are the curious ones, the dwarves are the greedy, rapacious ones, the gnomes are the crazy tinkers. Fine. So what does that mean about Gully Dwarves? Well, Gully Dwarves, it turns out, so gnomes, Kender, and dwarves are Grey Gem races. They're not allowed to use like arcane magic. They can crossbreed with humans, and you can get like half gnomes, half dwarves, half Kender. But if they breed with each other, you get these weird kind of like magically enhanced genetic offshoots. And this is where it just gets messed up. The way the story is set up, it's either that gnomes and humans had sex or gnomes and dwarves had sex and ended up creating these Gully Dwarves, which is this race of effectively idiots. Original text wrote them out to be just like unable to count past 3, have very limited intelligence, their language is stuttery. It is just ableist as hell. It's super almost racist. It's just horrible.
This chapter describes them as filthy, ragged, covered in sores, dumb as doorknobs.
It's awful. And they're treated like outcasts. They're called Gully Dwarves instead of their true name, the Agar, because the fact that the normal dwarves don't want anything to do with them, so they make them live in ghettos and in alleyways and like in sewers and trash cans and just like complete filth and garbage.
Here's again where we run up against some of the problems with race essentialism that D&D seems to have had for a long time, and comes from Lord of the Rings, and it's just this kind of if you're born a thing, you're always that thing, and doesn't matter, right? Like there are no good orcs.
It's very Redwall. If you're a dormouse, you're always going to be a good. If you're a fox, it doesn't matter how good you are, you will always be a fox.
And there's never any bad dormouse.
Yeah,
and there's never any good foxes.
Exactly.
There's no smart Gully Dwarves.
Right, and that's why the Gully Dwarves novel actually has them building a civilization and showing why they just keep getting screwed. But every other author realized and recognized how horrible this was. And frankly, I've wanted to retcon this for years to just be, instead of being like true-bred, inbred, like horrific racial just wrongness, I'm like, look, what if there was a tribe of dwarves that was cursed by Rarix during the Cataclysm and stuck in these forms until the gods come back? Because if you look at the stories, the only times they ever show up are in those 300 years between the Cataclysm and like the end of Legends, because that's the only time authors use them. After that, nobody thinks or talks about the Gully Dwarves. So, like I said, everybody's just kind of ashamed that they exist. So if we just say like, hey, Rarix comes out and says, guys, sorry, let me fix you, and boom, they become a intelligent race that has no blinders and they can just live their lives happily and it'll be fine.
Yeah, so that's the background on Gully Dwarves. Sadly, a blight on a otherwise great series.
It makes me so frustrated and unhappy that these people exist. But at the same time, the characters they've been given, it's almost even more tragic. Like, these characters are so good and important and wholesome and just get screwed by society. And I'm like, this is messed up, man. This is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Back to the story, though.
So Flint sees them, and as soon as he recognizes what they are, he wants to kill them because they held him prisoner for 3 years during the last 5 when he was out to learn of the gods. So he didn't. We learned that now. He didn't tell anyone that, but now we know that those 3 years, for 3 of the 5 years he was out, he was being held prisoner by Gully Dwarves.
Yeah, well,
it's weird when they talk about how dumb Gully Dwarves are and how awful they are, and it's like, well, but they managed to keep him imprisoned for 3 years. Like, how dumb is Flint if he's imprisoned for 3 years by Gully Dwarves?
To be fair, the Flint the King, the novel that talks about this period, is really good, and he exaggerates a lot. He was not held prisoner for 3, 4, 5 years. He was like stuck for a few minutes because they got screwed, but Flint he's ashamed and bitter that he got owned by Gully Dwarves.
And so Rasitlin thinks that they've lived here since the city fell, and then once the Draconians showed up, they enslaved them. Tanis thinks that the Gully Dwarves might help them, and Flint refuses to participate.
Because he's a racist.
Well, and this is just a thing that Flint commonly does. You know, we're only 17 chapters in, and I think this is the 3rd time Flint has decided that the plan is dumb and he does not want to participate.
Yeah, Flint is definitely the dictionary definition of too old for this, right? Like, Flint is like, I am not dealing with Gully Dwarves. I hate all of you and I hate all of this. Everybody's like, what are we going to do with this stupid dwarf? And Caramon, of all people, has the best idea ever. And he sits there and he sighs and he's like, gosh, man, it's too bad the dwarf's staying in line. If we do get the Gully Dwarfs to help us, who's going to help us keep the scum in line? Tanis is like amazed that Caramon's being this subtle, picks up the lead and is like, oh, I guess Sturm will do it. And then Flint's like, Sturm? A knight who won't stab an enemy in the back? You need someone who knows these foul creatures. And Tanis is like, well, I guess you're going to have to come with us. And he's like, you bet I do. And so they're like, all right.
They try to get in front of them. They try to get their attention. This whole mob of running dwarfs just ignores them. Rasitlin steps up and he takes the lead. He does a bunch of magic tricks, basically. Not real magic, but illusions. He makes a gold coin disappear, does a couple other tricks.
He does parlor tricks, basically.
Yeah, they're amazed by this stuff. And then he casts a friendship spell on them. Was there a friendship spell in D&D?
Well, yeah, he basically casts a charm spell.
Charm, okay.
Yeah, the charm spell basically means like 1d4 of the targets are now like your friends and will do whatever you say as long as you're not asking him to like do stupid things. Rasitlin, he earned his money working in like fairs and when him and his brother were out trying to just do their thing. But man, this chapter though, it's just like this description of the Gully Dwarves is so gross. But here we go. Rasitlin uses, dexterity and he flips coins. I mean, he does literally just like magic tricks that you would do in a kid's basement. And then once all like in the backyard of a birthday party, once the Gully Dwarves are totally like enthralled because he's treating them like children, because that's not condescending at all.
Because they are children. As written, they are written as children. Worse than children, actually.
Exactly.
It mentions here that they only live where not even animals will live. And then that despite that, they have a, quote, cheerful existence. And it's just like...
It's...
Because they're too stupid to know how gross and disgusting they are.
And it's just like, guys, this is not...
I don't know why they spent so much time just like... If I had to ask Margaret Rice and Tracy Hickman one question, it's like, why? Why did you make Gully Dwarves so terrible?
No, why would you waste so many words on this? It's like unnecessary. Rasitlin casts a charm spell on them, and now they're all his friends. So Tanis is like, what the hell is going on? All the dwarves, of course, because they speak a crude form of common. Friend, this our friend. Corridor lead that way. No, it lead that way. And I'm like, oh God, why are they speaking broken English on top of that? Rasitlin uses these guys to figure out how to go down. And Sturm is like, this is absurd and we're all going to die. And then one female Gully Dwarf, before Tanis could intervene with what Rasilin's doing, female Gully Dwarf takes matters into her own hands. She dashes into the melee of all the Gully Dwarves who are trying to take their new friend down to the place they think they want to go. And she smashes all their heads, dumps them in a row, gets them in line. This is the description we give it. She had a thick, bulbous nose. Her hair stood up wildly on end. She had a patched and ragged dress, thick shoes, and stockings that collapsed around her ankles. But she seemed to be a leader of the Gully Dwarves because they all eyed her with respect. This might have been because she carried a big, heavy bag slung over her shoulder. The bag dragged along the ground as she walked, occasionally tripping her. But the bag was of great importance. When one of the other Gully Dwarves attempted to touch it, she whirled around and smacked him across the face.
This is Boo Boo.
Yeah, this is Bapu right here. So she's like, look, the corridor goes to the big bosses. And Race is like, thank you, my dear. And he speaks another spell to basically make her fall in love with him. And she's like, tell me, little one, how many bosses? And she concentrates and she holds up a hand. She goes, 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. 2. And then Seram's like, oh God, please kill me. But then they hear the crack of a whip, and Race is like, what's going on? And the dwarf's like, yeah, it's a whip. The bosses get mad. We'll go.
Oh, yeah, this is where we learn that basically they're operating an elevator for the Draconians.
Yeah, they're basically slaves.
Yeah, they're the counterweight for when and that's why they have to run back and forth, because the lower and raise these elevators, they're basically the counterweights.
Yeah.
Rasitlin asks about the dragon's lair. She says she doesn't know, but she'll take them to the High Bulp, who does know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the High Bulp, of course, being the head of the Bulp clan of Gully Dwarves that lives here. They're hearing these weird noises, and they're trying to figure out, how are we going to go up or down? What's going on here? Tasselhoff shows up and is like, hey, I figured it out. It's a lift, Tanis, just like at the Dwarven mines. And what they use is a giant lard rendering pot. The Gully Dwarves have been standing in the line over here, run out when one of the Draconians jumps out, and they jump into the pot that's attached to this huge chain, and they go all the way down, and then the other pot comes up full of bosses, aka full of Draconians. And then the Draconians come out, and then the Gully Dwarves jump in, and they go the other way. Tan is like, so these bosses, how many Draconians are there by the pot? And Boop is like, 2. Not more than 2. And Taz is like, there's 4 of them. The little ones, not the big ones to cast spell. And Caramon's like, yeah, 4. We can handle that. And Tan's like, yeah, but what about the 15 more that are going to fall right after them? But they're like, well, we got to go down. So the chapter ends with our dear party about to jump into these 2 giant lard rendering pots to figure out what's going on at the bottom side of Xak Tsorath.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Next time.
These are 2 very, very epic and important. They might not seem important, but in the grand scheme of things, these are 2 of the most pivotal chapters in this novel.
They set up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they sure do.
Next time, it'll be chapter 18, Fight at the Lift, Bupu's Cure for a Cough. See you guys there next time. Shivam, why don't you tell us where people can find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at ElectroTal, and you can also find me in the back of your copy of Dragons of Deceit, out everywhere. Please pick it up, because support new Dragonlance, because God knows we don't know when we're ever going to get this again. I have another podcast called Casual Magic, where I talk about Magic the Gathering, and it comes out every single Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts, or on YouTube every Thursday.
And you can find me on Twitter at False Logic. And until next time, stay safe, companions.